so I write for Fairfax, which is probably why I also work for the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival doing their Put Victoria on Your Table video program. I also consult to a restaurant called Movida as well on their media and social media. Looking at trends, okay. I'll pick working in the newspaper, you have to be slightly ahead of the pack. So we're trying to forecast trends. So we're listening to food forecasting, but also trying to work out what works with a media story. And a media story these days has to also be a story that's going to work in social media. Okay, first one coming up, we're going to look at price, okay? Price is always going to be there in the domestic market, and price is always going to be there. Australians are so bloody stingy. They are so stingy. Have you seen the price of honey? It's $10 for a kilogram. That's, I think, half the cost of production. Australian consumers are so stingy. They don't want to pay for anything unless you can value add through telling a narrative. Now, food narrative and the actuality are two different things. I'm a journalist, I know that, okay? Because this is what you're doing, because the story you tell and where the facts are sometimes combine to tell a really good story. Okay, we're looking at health of food is going to be really important. Okay, with an ageing population, but also a more health-conscious, younger population. Fruit and vegetables as health-giving consumables are going to become more and more important. Phytonutrients, okay, we're just beginning to play around with this term. It's sitting on the outline. It's an outlier at present, but it will be coming into mainstream very shortly. Been speaking to there's been some serious research being done at Deakin University on the bitter compounds in olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, even at high acidity rates, that are almost pushing it out of the extra virgin olive oil area. What we're seeing is that those phytonutrients are nature's Nurofen, anti-inflammatories. Now, it's only going to be a matter of time before the big boys like Cobram Estate, or who's that? That's Boundary Bend, pick that up and run with it, as being eat olive oil and you won't have to take Nurofen. We're really close to doing that. Anthocyanins are going to be the other things. So anthocyanins, these are the compounds in food that make grapes red, that make the red carrots red. Anthocyanins, this is from the New York Times article, potential to fight cancer, calm inflammation, lower cholesterol and blood pressure, protect the ageing brain and reduce the risk of obesity, diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Who grows red things here? Hands up. Okay, stone fruit, looking at plums, we're looking at red carrots, red things. Fantastic. Anthocyanins, very shortly, they're going to be part of the doctor's kit to cure people. Anthocyanins, and we've also got some of these, the other phytochemicals, the bitter ones. But let's just look at the evolution of corn. When the Americans first got to the US, corn was all different colours. Corn was red, yellow, blue, olive, green, and these are all these compounds that die naturally, the kernels, were bred out to give sweeter, higher Brix, faster yielding, earlier yielding corn. And that happened really early on, right by about the 1800s. The original Indian corns had gone, and we were actually looking at just a handful of yellow varieties. But I want to tell you what's happening in Mexico. This is really exciting because the Mexicans are corn. They have two gods, and both of them are corn, and they are serious people because they are a mix of Catholicism, and we have football. They have corn, and what they do, corn is part of them because it's what they eat. And if you know anything about science, what you eat actually becomes your body. This is Maria. There's Maria. Yep, Maria. She's making some chocolate for us, and that's her daughter Anna. Anna is got some corn. She said, "Look, I'm sorry, it's not local corn. It comes from 15 miles away from where my uncle grows it." And then I think there's Pedro looking on as he's eating some corn in the background there, looking at young Anna, because young Anna's got some corn that's been dried and then soaked, and she's taking it off to go and see. Emidio, I think his name is. Emidio, this is the local miller. That's his son in the background. He's weighing out the corn because he's going to mill it with Anna. They're milling it. It's been soaked in a bit of lime as well. And that's the local mill. There's one or two in every town. And that's it. That's the masa. And they are going to put this out in a little bit. That's what they used to make the dye. They're dyers. They dye rugs and stuff. And that's the dough, that's the mustard. She's mixed with a few bits and pieces of the balls. She's making out some little tortillas, slapping them out with a hand. And that's her sister's, an auntie, and she's putting a bit of sauce on, and then go some flowers, some cut up thin flowers, also some zucchini flowers, and a bit of cheese, and that's an empanada. Who here uses social media? Okay, these guys use social media. I'm in contact with them on Twitter. So if you guys are on social media, and Mexican peasants can be, that is, you know, I won't say anything else, okay. The Mexican peasants are on Twitter. They're telling me about the ancient stuff. These guys are taking back the flavour. That stuff there is so flavourful. The Mexicans are buying in GM corn from the US. They've turned their back on it because they know it doesn't taste any good. It tastes like rubbish. This stuff is so beautiful. It's really, really, it's got a deep colour. It doesn't look so colourful here, but it's got a really deep colour, and it tastes so good. It tastes so good. It is so good to eat. When you're talking about phytonutrients, there's a lot to do with flavour, but first of all, if you want to identify the health-giving elements of phytonutrients for your food, you should be talking to your peak bodies or talking amongst yourselves and getting the research done into working out what are the phytonutrients in your food and what are the capabilities. I won't use the term superfood because that food has been, it's basically now, there's a term called food wank, okay, and it has now been broken, okay, and if you use the term superfood, on any of your packaging, it's already out of date, all right? So just like phytonutrient, we'll talk about that, you might have your own marketing term for it. Now, there's some varieties that have got more phytonutrients than others. Some of the old varieties have got really good health-giving properties, and also there's some new varieties coming through. I know you're probably aware of them, like the crossbreeds between, you know, kale is, who grows kale here? God, it's fantastic stuff, it really is. But there, you know, but God, like I used to live in Scotland, and I used to eat that when I had nothing else to eat. Yeah, but you know about the new varieties coming in where they're crossing kale and broccoli and getting and all, yeah, all this stuff's coming through now. And that, so what's it called? Kale. It's going to be fun. Brussels sprout. Can't wait. Oh, my kids love Brussels sprouts. No. I love Brussels sprouts. My kids eat them. Brussels sprouts, but peel them. Butter, anchovy, lemon rind, lemon juice, put it in the pan, just a quick toss in the wok. My kids hoover that stuff up. And yeah, but they never get a cold. All right, health, flavour. Okay, so phytonutrients and flavour are inextricably linked. Okay, so if something's got a high level of phytonutrients in it, it's going to taste good. Okay, so flavour. So people actually, so once, again, we're looking at people who are working on the taste, the flavour of things, flavour being the concept of taste plus smell equals flavour. Flavour is laid down in the memory of the brain near emotion. So that's why we're talking about before about fruit and veg being the flavour memory being laid in the first 6 years. You've got to get people in then. And chefs love flavour. Because a chef, we're talking about the relationship between chefs, so getting a chef, celebrity chefs, etc. Chefs don't really care that much about the way that food looks. Because they're going to transform it themselves, and that's their power. They have the power to transform food, the raw material, and one thing into the next. And chefs love flavour, and this is where the opportunity lies for people, for growers, to come up with some responses to actually work with chefs and people who are producing flavoursome food. There's one chef this is, I'd say, Australia's Yotam Ottolenghi. He's a guy called Matt Wilkinson. Anyone working with Matt? Matt has Pope Joan. He has another bar in the city, where's someone help me out, in Brunswick, and he's just opened a retail grocery store. But he's got a book. This book has sold, I think, 150,000, 200,000 copies and been translated into French, German, and American. You have to actually translate into American because the weights and measures are different. I wasn't being cheeky. And so he is an advocate of fruit and veg and salads, salad greens, but this is all sorts of salads using cucurbits, the pumpkins and the like, potatoes and cereals as well. And this is the trend. This book is actually a little bit ahead of the trend in Australia. This is probably a couple of years ahead, but that's why it's doing so well overseas, because Australia is, in the world terms, global terms, about 5 years behind. It's getting shorter, but we're still 5 years behind, I reckon. This is Frank. I work with Frank. This is Frank Kamori. He's a co-owner of Movida, and he is just the man who just loves deliciousness. I'm very lucky I get to go to Spain with this man, and we eat and drink a lot. We did about 1 million kilojoules last trip between the two of us for about 6 weeks. But they have, like, he says, oh God, it's time of the year for the cogollos. The cogollos are lettuce, they look like little cross lettuce, but they come from Toulouse. And they have a DO, denominación de origen, for these particular lettuce. And everyone goes crazy about them. To tell you the truth, they're not that much better than the baby costs you get in the twin pack at Coles. But they go crazy about them. And they go, oh, it's time of the year for them. Yeah, let's go and get some cogollos. Yeah, we'll drink some sherry. Yeah, and some beer and some more wine, and we'll just go out and stuff. They get excited about their veg, really excited about their veg. And Frank has brought that love of veg and that love of the primary produce back into his kitchen. Kitchens, I think Movida employs about 120 people now, so they're not a small business. They've got restaurants around Australia and airports, and up in Sydney now, and 3 in Melbourne. And he deals with growers like, this is Andrew Wood and Jill McCalman. Andrew was a publisher and decided to become even poorer and by becoming a farmer. And he taught himself how to become a horticulturalist by speaking to other people, but he knew that his ultimate aim was not to produce the 99-cent deal. He wanted to produce a product where he could charge wholesale retail prices at wholesale levels by going to chefs like Matt Wilkinson, like Frank Kamora, like Andrew McConnell from Cutler & Co, and people like Dan Barber from Bray in the west, just west of Geelong, who's one of perhaps Australia's best chef, and just been the only author in Australia to be picked up by Faden Publishing. That means nothing to any of you, I know, but it's just like, oh my God, he's just won the Brownlow. It's just like, So these dudes here, they said, okay, we're going to go direct and sell to chefs. And what they've done in doing so is actually created a market for small vegetable but it's not the perfect vegetable, but it's the heritage breed vegetables that are such a bugger to grow, but they've been able to nail some of them, and they've culled down their range to be able to nail some of these vegetables. And they're actually looking at flavour, organic. It's organic, and it's they're looking after their soils, and but it's just the phytonutrients and the flavour are just so intense in these veg. But then that's what the chefs are after. They're after that intensity of flavour. And this is I think Sarah Schroers. She works with the Movida group as well, and she grows. They grow out at where are they? They're do you know where they're near you, aren't they? Out near they're near Clyde, aren't they? Schroers. Yeah, Schroers. Yeah, grow beetroot and leeks. They grow really good leeks. Yeah, and they grow. Well, you can get a chance to talk about them in a second. We'll come up and talk about your beetroot. Again, beetroot, fantastic vegetable. And so she works with Movida growing the beetroot because they have that's a big part of the Spanish cuisine is beetroot, but also leeks as well, which is a really important base ingredient to the mirepoix when you're cutting out the vegetables first up. And leeks go into so many dishes, and a good leek gives you great flavour. It's never the star ingredient, but it's such an important one because that's the base for the sofrito, for the mirepoix. We've been talking about provenance. Everyone wants to know where the food comes from. And there's a little quote from Michael Pollan. So people, we spend so much time in our businesses, and we spend so much time in our farms and our offices and talking to people and working with our buyers. This is just an example of how disconnected people are. This is the Agrarian Kitchen. This is down in New Norfolk, near Hobart. That's the old farmhouse. They sort of turned their back on education in Tasmania a while back. And that's now become a kitchen. And this is Rodney Dunn. He went down from Sydney. There's a huge exodus of people going out of Sydney down to Hobart as part of this food trend to get back to Provenance to find out where food came from. I think it's a ridiculous amount of money. It's about $300 to $600 a day, depending what it is, to go out and hunt for mushrooms or cut up a beast, cook a pizza and eat it. People are willing to spend a huge amount of money. Even down the Mornington Peninsula, there are mushroom tours, for like half an hour. You go and hunt, things we used to stand on as children. What a missed business opportunity. They're $25 a kilo now. I want to tell you about another little place too. All right, this is people working together, and this is the creation of a micro brand. I know a lot of you people are into big business, but this is just about perhaps bringing those three things in together about flavour, about the health of food, but also where food comes from. The Red Gum Food Group is it's registered in Kundruk in Victoria, which is about 45 minutes downstream from Echuca. It is a glorious little place. There was a red gum mill there, but that's now more or less closed down. They grow really good rice across the border in Barham. They have a really decent tourist trade with the Barham State Forest and the Gumbower Island National Park. They grow some really decent citrus and some good avocado, lamb, beef and pork in that area. They got together because they're so far away from any market for domestically, and they got together. There was some people who, I think you may have heard of Tim and Katrina Meyer from Barham Avocados. They grow really good avocados in the like those sand dunes, those aeolian sand dunes around places like Mildura and this area here. The temperatures get really low at night, and so they don't have to, they pick them first in the morning, so they don't have to spend a lot of money getting the field heat out of the produce, but also because they don't refrigerate their avocados, they don't activate the pectase enzyme that breaks down the cell walls, and so they get a really smooth ripening. You know how avocados actually hit a peak and they go jump up and they rock down again and they're at ripening? They get a beautiful smooth ripening curve. Delicious, some of the best avocados. And they actually ended up supplying the Movida group as well, and Matt Wilkinson's group as well. And what are they? This is their Twitter. What are they saying? They're talking about recipes. They're on Twitter. Every day they're talking to their customers. They're talking to their retail customers. They're talking to their wholesale customers because they now sell all around Australia, and I think there's some export to New Zealand as well to find out, to when it's counter-seasonal there. And what are they saying? They're talking about Rural Women Coalition, a couple with webinars. So they're talking about their strong female, very, very strong female interconnectivity there. A lot of women talking with each other about business, because a lot of these business, the husband-wife teams, and funnily enough, the women seem to take the lead. They're talking about the top paddock, who's I think is a beef grower or a veal grower, and they're talking about some sort of scarf community. They're talking about community, how to cook with avocado, and some food education, mums and technology. So they're just them actively out into their constituencies, giving information but being seen to be connected, because that social cohesion is so important for these businesses. But this is no longer a small business. I think they were micro, now they're small, we're heading towards medium, with I think they've just dropped to $500,000 on another shed or something like that. But from a very small starting base, this is, they're growing. Good product. These are the other people in the group. These are the Mathers. They grow Bundara pork, and the husband and wife team, I think people in the industry might know Mathers Trucking. They do some up and down the highway between Echuca and here, sending rice and etc. down to the ports down here, and kind of CUB products back up the highway. And Lauren again is the driving force in this team. They do really good pork, and again they work with Movida. They work with all the best restaurants in Melbourne, and a decent sized industry. And because they're across the border in New South Wales, they can avoid the stringent surveillance of Prime Safe and make their own small goods just across the border and make excellent small goods, bloody good small goods. But they're on Twitter. What are they doing? They're talking. They're talking about Gourmet Traveller. Yeah, the Gourmet Traveller have recognised them, and so they're out there tweeting about them. Gourmet Traveller have recognised them as being one of their best suppliers. So that whole thing about the Red Gum Food Group is about provenance. They come from a place. They come from the Murray. We're on the Murray. We live by the water. We look after our land, we look after our people. So they're selling the story of the water, the people, and they invite chefs up there, and they go and, you know, who's heard of Kundruk, apart from the people from that area? Who's ever heard of Kundruk before? I never had, you had. Yeah, but you're in the industry, mate, you have to be. But they grow amazing stuff up there, and there's a really good, an interconnected network. So they've created a brand out of nowhere, the Red Gum Food Group. If food comes from there, it's got this little halo effect around it. Just by telling people where they are, by pushing the provenance, by pushing not just the promise, but the fact that they care for other people, which they do, but they tell people about it at the same time. They're good people. I eat their food. That's me. You can contact me any of those things for the at Food Cornish at Twitter and Instagram. There's my email address if you ever get a story. Just say, I want to tell you about fruit fly in our area, I'll listen to you. I've got a couple of editors who are interested in those sort of stories. Or you can call me if you ever want to complain about the spelling of the articles.